Patricia Reeves's 73rd birthday brunch began with champagne toasts and forced smiles. Her son Joseph sat at the opposite end, his wife Karen beside him, both gripping their glasses too tightly. Joseph's hands fidgeted under the tablecloth, a folded napkin twisted between his fingers. The table was laid with linen and crystal, 10 guests in polite conversation, until Joseph cleared his throat and pushed a glossy folder across the polished wood.
Happy birthday, Mom. We've booked you a room at Cedar Grove.
The folder landed in front of Patricia, the words Cedar Grove Assisted Living embossed in silver.
The deposit's already paid. It'll be easier for everyone.
Patricia opened the folder with steady hands. Inside, a deposit receipt for $8,400 a month, stamped non-refundable. Every fork halted, every head turned. The birthday brunch had become a courtroom. Patricia laid her napkin on the table, rose slowly, and tried to excuse herself, voice quiet but unbreaking. She walked out of the dining room back straight, while Joseph half stood in protest, and the guests sat in ringing silence. The echo of her footsteps died as she entered the study, a room that still smelled of Robert's pipe tobacco and old paper. She stood before the metal file cabinet he had installed in 1989, its lock worn smooth by his key. Patricia pulled open the drawer, the brass key still in the lock, and lifted a thick manila folder marked deed in his handwriting. Inside lay the warranty deed, yellowed but crisp, dated September 14th, 1989. Below the legalese, a handwritten paragraph began with the bold heading, Life Estate Clause. Patricia traced Robert's sharp cursive, a clause added at his insistence, guaranteeing her the right to stay in their home no matter what.
He saw this coming. Even then, Robert knew.
Her eyes lifted to the framed photograph on the wall, their wedding day, 1968, his face full of promise.
You always protected me, Robert. Even now.
She closed the folder, her jaw set, the deed now a cold weight in her hands. Somewhere in those lines lay the answer she needed. She spread the deed open again, angling the lamp to catch every hand-stroked letter of Robert's addition. The grantee, Patricia Reeves, shall hold absolute right of occupancy and possession until her natural death, regardless of any declaration of incapacity. 2 county recorder stamps confirmed it had been filed and renewed, once in 1989, again in 2004. Behind the deed, a separate certified paper labeled Enforcement Bond detailed the financial penalty if anyone tried to break the clause.
He made sure they couldn't ignore it.
Inside her desk drawer, she found Robert's leather journal, opened to an entry where he described his own mother losing her home to a probate battle. From the journal, I watched them take her house while she sat in a nursing home. Never again.
This is why he did it. Not distrust, protection.
She glanced at the telephone on the desk, its rotary dial silent. Tomorrow she would call Frank's son, Michael, whose number Robert had written in the margin years ago. For now, she simply pressed the deed against her chest. The weight of Robert's love was heavier than any court order. The next morning, Patricia turned the rotary dial with the number Robert had written years ago.
Hayes and Hayes, Michael speaking. How can I help you?
Michael, this is Patricia Reeves. Your father, Frank, handled our estate years ago.
Mrs. Reeves, of course. I have your entire file right here. Deed, will, the enforcement bond.
Michael placed the deed on his desk, the enforcement bond clipped beside it, a copy his father had prepared decades earlier.
The life estate clause is unassailable. Recorded twice, bonded against any challenge.
My son and his wife want me in a nursing home. They'll try for conservatorship. Can they override this?
Not if we act first. I can file a preemptive injunction this afternoon. It would block any petition before it's even filed.
Do it. File it today. I won't let them take my home.
Michael promised the injunction would be filed by Friday afternoon. Patricia hung up the phone with a steady hand. At the law office downtown, Michael Hayes prepared the final call. The injunction had been stamped and filed.
It's done, Mrs. Reeves. The injunction is active. Any conservatorship petition will be dismissed at the door.
Thank you, Michael. Your father would be proud.
Patricia set the phone down. The house around her was still, but the balance of power had shifted. She was safe now, legally, but she also knew this was the calm before the storm. Somewhere across town, Joseph and Karen still believed they controlled the outcome. They had no idea the game was already over. She opened the folder and spread the documents across her desk: the deed, the enforcement bond, the injunction. Robert's foresight, now wrapped in legal armor.
Let them try. They'll learn soon enough.
She poured herself a cup of tea and waited. The certified mail would reach Joseph on Monday. The house was quiet, but for the first time in days, Patricia felt the steady presence of her husband standing with her. The certified envelope arrived Monday morning. Joseph pulled it from the mailbox with a casual glance, then froze at the return address. Hayes and Hayes. He ripped it open on the porch, the injunction papers spilling out as Karen's face went pale beside him.
An injunction? How could she get an injunction?
She's trying to trap us in that house. That deposit is non-refundable. $8,000.
He stomped inside, phone already to his ear, while Karen stood rigid in the doorway, her nails digging into her palms.
You had no right, Mom. You'll pay for that deposit, and you'll leave that house.
The house stays with me, Joseph. Your father's deed made it permanent.
Dad has been dead for 15 years. You can't hide behind a ghost.
I am not hiding. Consider the $8,000 tuition in family law.
She hung up. In the living room, Joseph stared at his phone, breathing hard, as Karen whispered about lawyers. Patricia gathered the glossy nursing home brochures from the folder, bundling them tightly with kitchen twine. She carried the stack to the center of the front porch and laid it down where no one could miss it. She stepped back, arms folded, and regarded the parcel for a long, steady moment. She retreated behind the screen door, folded her arms, and waited. 20 minutes later, a silver sedan pulled to the curb. Karen stepped out with a rehearsed cold stare. Karen marched up the porch steps, her heels clicking on the wood. Her eyes found the brochures as if they were something venomous. She snatched the twine-tied stack off the boards, her jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in her cheek. She pivoted without a word, stormed down the steps, and yanked the car door open. Through the screen, Patricia watched the empty porch, the spot where the brochures had laid now just sun-warmed boards. The sedan pulled away from the curb, the glossy brochures vanishing with it. When the sedan was gone, Patricia left the screen door and walked to the kitchen, where the empty folder still lay on the counter. Inside the folder, only the deposit receipt remained, $8,400, stamped non-refundable in red. She picked it up, held it to the light, then tore it cleanly in half. She crossed to the blue recycling bin and let the pieces fall, watching them settle at the bottom.
Consider it tuition, Joseph.
The deed was safe, the injunction filed, and now the receipt was exactly where it belonged. That evening, Patricia climbed the stairs to her bedroom with a lightness she hadn't felt in days. She pulled back the quilt on her own bed, the one Robert had repaired for her years ago, and settled against the pillows.
You kept your promise, Robert.
She closed her eyes, and the house settled into a long, quiet peace, the deed clause having done exactly what a father had intended. Morning sunlight gilded the rose garden as Patricia stepped out, pruning shears in one gloved hand. She knelt by the bushes her mother planted, the scent of blooming tea roses rising with the dew. By the front door, the brass key to the study still hung on its hook. No longer needed for battle, but never removed. She settled onto the porch swing, a book in her lap, the wood creaking gently as she pushed off.
He built a wall decades ago, and it held.
Inside, above the bedroom dresser, Robert's deed and the enforcement bond hung in a single dark wood frame. At dusk, the house glowed from every window, the porch light burning steady. Patricia stood at the living room window, a teacup, warming her hands, watching the street grow quiet. The roofline cut a sharp silhouette against the deepening sky, a fortress that had weathered a siege without a crack. Inside, the woman who held the keys slept again in the bed she never left. The next day, Patricia stood in the study, the morning light slanting through the lace curtains. She touched the frame of his favorite bookcase, the one he built the summer Joseph was born. On the wall, their wedding portrait, young faces full of certainty that they would never leave this house.
You said this house was our anchor, Robert. You kept that promise.
She remembered his voice the night they signed the deed. If anything ever happens, Patricia, this house will never be taken from you. She had thought he was being dramatic. Now she understood the weight of his words. She walked to the front door, lifted the brass key from its hook, and held the warm metal in her palm.
You built this house with your hands, Robert. I'll protect it with everything I have.
And she knew, whatever Joseph threw at her next, the foundation beneath her feet was unshakable. That same afternoon, across town, Karen Reeves stood in her living room, a fist pressed to the kitchen counter.
We lost $8,000, Joseph. $8,000. Because she waved some old piece of paper.
It's an injunction, Karen. A preemptive injunction. Her lawyer filed it before we could even make a move.
Then we file a conservatorship petition anyway. Let a judge decide if she's competent.
The injunction blocks exactly that. We'd be laughed out of court. My father made sure we can't touch her.
Then get a second opinion. There's always a loophole. Call that attorney Frank's son used to work with. I got his number.
She'll never stop. Karen will burn the whole family down before she admits defeat.
Don't look at me like that. This is for us, for our future. Are you with me or not?
I am with you. Just call him.
Karen's smile sharpened as she pressed dial. The injunction papers still scattered on the counter, a battle lost, but a war she refused to end. The next afternoon, Patricia drove to the cemetery on the edge of town, a small bouquet of rosemary and white roses on the passenger seat. She walked the familiar path to Robert's headstone, the grass still soft from the morning rain.
I came to say thank you, Robert. Your claws held the walls of this home against everything they threw.
She laid the bouquet at the base of the stone, her fingers tracing the carved letters of his name.
I felt so alone, and then I found your handwriting. It was like you were still here.
A sudden wind stirred the oak leaves overhead, swirling a few across the grave.
Is that you? Even now, you are protecting me. I always knew you'd find a way.
She stood there for a long moment, the breeze settling as if the answer had been given.
I'll keep this house for us, for the life we built. No one will ever take it.
She turned and walked back to the car, her steps steady, the weight of the last week lifting with every footfall. Later that week, Patricia walked through the polished doors of Hayes, and Hayes, the wood-paneled foyer, still smelling of lemon polish and old law books.
Mrs. Reeves, I've pulled the complete file my father kept, everything Robert insisted on, the full armor.
He set the leather-bound binder on the desk, its spine cracking as he opened to the enforcement bond, the notary seals still raised.
This bond doesn't just scare off challengers. It guarantees a financial penalty if anyone violates the life estate. A poison pill.
He thought of even that. A financial penalty.
And the bond covers all legal fees. Any lawyer Joseph hires will face a wall, and they won't get a penny.
He slid a certified copy of the deed across the desk, the county stamps from 1989 and 2004 sharp under the office lights.
With the injunction, No judge will even entertain a conservatorship petition. Your son's hands are tied, just as Robert intended.
Patricia took the pen, signed the final confirmation, and let the ink dry beside Robert's handwriting. She left the office with the manila envelope under her arm, Robert's last gift made unbreakable. 2 days after the injunction was stamped, the telephone jangled in the living room.
You manipulative old woman. You think a piece of paper from 1989 will stop us?
It already has.
We'll tie you up in court so long you'll die before it's resolved. Then the house is ours.
The enforcement bond ensures you'll pay for every hour my attorney spends, and a judge will dismiss your petition. The battle is over, Karen.
I will get that house.
Then you'll waste your money. In the meantime, the brochures are on the porch if you want them back.
Karen slammed the phone. The dial tone hummed in Patricia's ear. She replaced the receiver and looked out the window at the quiet street. The mail would still arrive Monday, but the war's last shot had just been fired, and it missed. Later that afternoon, a familiar truck pulled into Patricia's driveway, its engine cutting abruptly. Joseph climbed out and stood in the driveway, hands jammed into his pockets, eyes fixed on the front porch.
Joseph, come inside.
Mom, you have to lift the injunction. Karen is threatening to leave me. She says I am useless if I can't provide for us.
And what will you provide, Joseph? A nursing home bed for your mother?
That wasn't my idea, Karen. She convinced me it was the only way. I didn't want to hurt you.
A man who loves his wife should sometimes tell her no. Karen is bullying you, and you are letting her.
She'll leave me, Mom. I can't be alone.
Then she was never yours to keep. The house stays with me, Joseph. The keys stay with me.
Joseph stood motionless, then turned without a word and walked back to his truck, the weight of his choice settling on his shoulders. The clerk at the county recorder's office pressed the raised seal onto the certified deed copy, the life estate clause now in the public record for anyone to see. She slipped the copies into a plain manila envelope, her fingers grazing the notary stamp as if it were a handshake from Robert. Back home, she laid the deed and the enforcement bond on the dining room table, the yellowed paper, a map of a 50-year love letter.
This is it, Robert. The final chapter.
She chose a dark wood frame from her study, one that had once held a photograph of them at their first home. With steady hands, she placed the deed and bond side by side inside the frame, their edges aligned. Her husband's handwriting still bold. She hung the frame on the bedroom wall, just below the wedding portrait, where she would see it every morning.
Now the whole world can see what you did for me.
She stepped back, the afternoon light catching the glass, and for the first time in weeks, her smile reached her eyes. The house settled around her, not silent, but alive with the quiet hum of a battle won and a future held safe. The next evening, a knock at the front door pulled Patricia from her garden. She opened it to find a woman from the brunch holding a covered casserole dish. The guest pressed the dish into Patricia's hands, her voice low and direct. "We were all horrified. You deserved better than that." Patricia smiled and thanked her. Before she had even closed the door, another neighbor arrived with a loaf of banana bread, then another with a pie. They came quietly, one by one, as if word had spread. A folded note was tucked into the bread, signed with 6 names from the party. No one said Joseph's name out loud, but the silence around his absence spoke louder than any gift.
All of you didn't need to do this. A simple call would have been enough.
An older man from across the street shook his head as he handed her a jar of preserves. 40 years. We've known you, Patricia. This is what neighbors do." She carried the dishes into the kitchen, her counter now crowded with covered plates and warm bread. By nightfall, the porch was empty, but the house felt less like a fortress and more like a home again. Spring returned, and with it, the garden burst into color. Patricia set out folding chairs under the oak tree, and the women from the neighborhood arrived with pitchers of lemonade and plates of shortbread. She perched on the edge of a wicker stool, a borrowed hat shading her eyes, and for an hour the talk was of grandchildren, recipes, and the new rose cultivar she had coaxed into bloom. A card table held a pitcher of lemonade and 3 half-empty glasses. Someone had brought a portable radio, and a soft jazz tune drifted across the lawn.
You know Robert planted this tree the year we moved in. He said it would shade our old age.
Her neighbor raised her glass. Then he gave you the shade he promised, and a whole lot more. Patricia looked at the house, its windows open, the deed now hanging inside like a heartbeat of the home. She had not seen Joseph in 6 months. Karen had taken a job in another state, and the silver sedan no longer prowled her street.
Some distances can't be bridged, only accepted.
The garden party wound down at dusk. Guests kissed her cheek and drifted away, leaving the scent of roses and the echo of laughter. Patricia stood alone on the porch, the framed deed visible through the bedroom window, a quiet triumph that had become ordinary, and in its ordinariness complete. A few days later, Karen drove through the neighborhood, the nursing home brochures stacked on her passenger seat. She marched up to a neighbor's door, the twine-tied stack in hand, and offered the deposit at a steep discount. A voice through the screen said, "No, thank you," and the door clicked shut. She stood a moment, the glossy pages limp in her grip, then walked back to the car alone. At home, she lifted the lid of her own recycling bin and dropped the brochures inside. The next morning, the hydraulic growl of the recycling truck rattled her kitchen window. She watched as the mechanical arm lifted her bin, the brochures sliding forward against the metal. The bin tipped. Cedar Grove Assisted Living tumbled into the crusher, the glossy cover curling away. Karen pressed her palm against the cold glass until the truck rumbled away, leaving an empty bin and a non-refundable silence. She turned from the window. The house was quiet, just her, the echo of an $8,000 mistake, and not a single thing to show for it. That afternoon, Patricia sat at the study desk, a single sheet of cream stationery laid before her. She wrote, "Dear Robert, the house is safe. Our son forgot what you remembered, but your claws held." She signed her name, blotted the ink, and folded the page into a neat square. She walked to the far wall, pushed aside the landscape painting, and dialed the combination of the small iron safe. The door swung open, revealing the original deed and the leather journal Robert had kept. She placed the folded letter on top of the deed, her fingers brushing the old paper as if touching his hand. She closed the safe door and turned the dial until the lock clicked solidly. She swung the painting back into place, the landscape of their first autumn together, and stepped away.
That's the last piece, Robert. Right where it belongs.
The study settled into stillness, the deed now guarded by more than law, by memory, by ink, and by the steadfast love of a man who saw decades ahead. That evening, the Reeves house glowed from every window, a lantern of warm light against the deepening dusk. Through the living room window, Patricia's silhouette moved, pausing briefly at a lamp before the light went out. The study window followed, darkness climbing the walls, until only the kitchen and the porch remained lit. The kitchen light flicked off, leaving the porch light alone, a single amber star guarding the front steps. Inside, Patricia climbed the stairs with a slow, steady tread, her hand skimming the banister her husband had carved. At the landing, she paused before the bedroom window, looking out one last time into the garden she had fought to keep. She drew the curtain, and the bedroom light dimmed. The house was finally still. The porch light burned on, a quiet sentinel, as it had every night for 44 years. Not a soul walked the street, but if you had passed, you might have felt it, the weight of a promise kept. And far above the roofline, the stars emerged, as quiet and unbending as the deed that held the ground beneath. Morning light found the brass key still hanging by the front door, untarnished by the chaos that had swirled around it. Patricia opened her eyes in the bedroom. She had never surrendered. The familiar ceiling above her, like a long-held promise. She paused before the dark wood frame on her bedroom wall, the deed and bond side by side, proof of a battle fought in ink. Downstairs, the study safe remained sealed, its contents, a folded letter, a yellowed deed, now part of the house's bones. She stepped onto the porch, the boards creaking in their old rhythm, and breathed in the scent of her garden. No silver sedan idled at the curb. No envelope arrived from a lawyer, only the quiet of a street that had witnessed everything and asked nothing. The war was over. The house had won, not by force, but by the steady weight of a father's love set down in legal stone. If anyone asked how a 73-year-old woman had outlasted greed, the answer hung on the study wall, a wedding portrait from 1968. Her husband had remembered what her son had forgotten, that home is not a transaction, but a trust, and a clause, written in 1989, had no expiration date, only a promise that Patricia Reeves would live in her own home until the very last of her days.